Race Driver 3 is the ultimate racing simulation video game, and it's roaring its way back onto console and PC. Eight years in the making and always in pole position, the series has sold over 6 million copies. This February, you'll be able to join the race when Race Driver 3 launches on PlayStation 2, Xbox and PC. Over 100 individual championships covering 35 different racing disciplines. Forget modded cars, forget street cars, forget fictional race cars. In Race Driver 3, you'll be racing some of the world's most exciting real competition cars, both modern and classic. Realism is what this game is about. The terminal damage engine has been souped up, so you'd better watch out, as any bad driving will take its toll on your vehicle. True mechanical effects mean that tyres warm up, radiators overheat and engines blow. Plus, the AI has been dramatically improved. So with up to 21 cars on track in ultra-close pack racing, computer-controlled drivers will be prone to the same errors as a human driver. It's the most fun you can have on four wheels. But you don't need to take our word for it. We've got UK racing fanatic Louise Brady to check out just how realistic the game really is.
When Codemasters invited me to Alton Park racetrack in the sunny north of England to get my hands on over 35 different racing classes, I thought all my Christmases had come at once. But then they told me it was all going to be on a computer game. Now, the guys behind Race Driver 3 tell me this is the most realistic driving sim yet, and being a petrol head myself, I have to put these claims to the test. This is Paul ONeill. Now, he's a racing instructor here at Alton Park, and he's going to give me tips on how to negotiate this track and hopefully a bit more help later on with the game. Now, I've had my lesson on how to drive like a professional. I think it's time I test my skills in Race Driver 3. But before I do that, I spoke to the team behind the game just to see what goes into producing such an exhilarating racing game.
It's totally about the driving experience.
It's the ultimate racing game.
More motorsports than any other type of racing game on the market.
It's about as close as you can get to the feel of being a real racing driver without having to risk your life on the track.
Today's games require £1 million plus budgets and team numbers often in their hundreds. Race Driver 3 is no different. This busy office is where the series has grown from basic idea into a 6 million selling phenomenon.
One of the newest things, the biggest things in the latest version of Race Driver is the Pro Career mode. This lets you choose from one of 6 different racing disciplines.
Oval racing split out, GT racing, touring cars split out.
More cars, we've got more tracks, we've got more championships.
Going the monster trucks and you're there and you're wheeling from the start lines and so on. And that experience is worth more than trying 7 different types of day.
It includes qualifying sessions, it includes flags, it includes, you know, if you cut a corner you can get disqualified, so it has much more of a motorsport feel than the other previous games.
This dedicated approach to creating a true-to-life experience has been the driving force behind the creation of one of gaming's most realistic physics engines.
The physics we have now on Race Driver 3 is by far the most complex that we ever designed. There are something over 300 or 400 different physics parameters that the designers can actually use to tune the car.
The physics model itself is actually relatively straightforward to put together in that you're copying real-world physical models. I think the difficulty comes in when you actually look at the different racing styles, because that's when subjectivity plays a part. Everyone has a different opinion of how a different car should race, and the way we've gotten around that is to actually talk to the racing drivers who take part in these series.
For example, with the Formula 3 team, the guys at Alan Docking Racing, they'd pull off telemetry data for us. So the car would be there with them at Silverstone, the car would come into the pits, they'd plug a laptop into the car, and they would pull off the telemetry data for us, so that when we go back to the studio and we race the Formula 3 car around the track, we can compare our own telemetry data to the telemetry data of the actual race car. So that's how far we'll go to make sure the cars are as realistic as possible.
Despite creating a true-to-life experience for the hardcore gamer, the team were also keen to make Race Driver 3 more accessible and appealing to the more casual player.
There's a danger that ToCA could be seen as quite hardcore, you know, very sim, but this one, it's a lot of fun. It's racing, it's about the realism, it's about the racing.
We've got this differentiation between sim and pro simulation mechanics. And basically what that allows us to do is not have to compromise so much. We don't have to just go in the middle of those two. We can try and aim to please both separately.
The Pro Sim are exact real-world variables and settings that you find in a real racing car, but because of that, they can be quite difficult to drive. You have to put in a long time to actually get the standard to drive those cars. Whereas the sim physics settings are what the casual gamer can select to make them feel like a racing driver. So we just add a few little traction control things and other elements to make those cars easy to handle, but still make them exciting and feel like they're a real racing driver.
It doesn't matter if you don't watch motor racing every weekend. It doesn't matter if you don't know what the difference between understeer and oversteer is. None of those things matter in the game. What does matter is that we present the game in a light that's friendly to the player.
Hardcore or casual, there is one thing that unites all racing fans, and that's being able to get behind the wheel of a fast car and put your foot down.
In the game we have 35 different racing classes, and that amounts to well over 100 championships in the game. We've got also over 100 different circuits, lots of variety there. So again, whatever you like in the racing world you can find.
It is a huge game. We've got classic cars, so everything from 1930s Grand Prix cars. Big license for us this time is the BMW F1T, which we've managed to incorporate. So we have not only their car from this season's F1, but also classics from them. Damon Hill's championship winning cars in there as well from the 90s. Some of the off-road stuff is particularly exciting. Monster trucks are huge fun. Take off too quick, they're going to wheelie away. They're a lot of fun. A lot of other new off-road content as well with sprint cars.
The vast majority of cars we've got for this game are race spec cars. So what we've done is we've taken licenses from championships or from teams and licensed the actual race spec car as opposed to the road cars. A lot of other driving games you get to drive road cars on tracks, but in Race Driver 3 you're actually racing fully race prepared cars on racetracks.
And with fully prepped race cars screaming bumper to bumper around a track, it's inevitable that there's going to be some damage. But unlike other race games, Race Driver 3 has afforded the same amount of effort into building the cars as it does to destroying them.
Many other games don't feature damage, and I think there are two reasons for this. That there can be problems from a licensing point of view. Many car manufacturers don't want to see their cars getting smashed up. That's becoming less of an issue now. But also just the production time it takes to actually model damage. It costs a lot more money to do that. But I think that's another thing that puts some companies off from doing that.
It's not about glorifying damage. It's not about glorifying crashing or death or destruction or anything. There's nothing like that in the game. It is just about real-world effects.
Fundamentally, it's part of the sport. I think what we do is we spend a lot of time making sure the car's damaged in the correct manner.
Everything in the car can fall off or break or damage. Bumpers will fly off, the chassis can twist, glass will smash where you've got glass in the cars, plastic will rip and shred. There's a central section of the car, the little area where the driver sits, and that's the only safe area. Everything around the car up to that point will squash, as it does in real life.
Creating a physics engine to recreate real damage isn't as basic as just crumpling the bodywork.
The car will bend and crumple if you're going to hit a wall at 100 miles an hour, but different cars behave in different ways. If you take an open wheel car like an F1 car, for example, you know that the suspension is the weak point on that car. It doesn't take much to break that off, and these are the kind of things that we're simulating.
Our damage model itself has again changed and adapted over time to as new powerful platforms come in, we've used that power in clever ways. But it's still the basic system, which is very much like you'll see in a crash test facility. It's called finite element modelling. It's where a car is broken down into as many small points as possible, and they reflect the material types that you've got in the cars, like plastic and metal and the chassis and so forth. So when a car collides, all of those are like little mini springs, and they'll affect each other. And if you get the weightings right, you can get your damage modelling looking as close to the real world as possible.
When you're playing the game, obviously because it's about motorsport, you soon quickly realise it's best not to drive into the back of someone and to drive in a correct manner. So the game effectively punishes the player for driving recklessly.
And it's not just the player that gets punished for careless driving. With up to 21 cars on the track, bumper-to-bumper computer-controlled drivers are prone to the same errors as a human driver.
I think one of the key strengths of the Race Driver series has been the quality AI, which I think many other games struggle to get right. Getting cars racing with the human player, allowing for his mistakes, but racing well is actually a very tough thing to do. And again, this is one of the areas that we've adapted and built and worked on over the last 8 years.
I think the aggressive nature and the bumper-to-bumper action really does help the game. You know, from my point of view, it really is a roller coaster, sweaty palm experience. That pack of cars ahead of you, they're all tight. You're working your way through the field, lap by lap. And then if you can get your way to the front, it's even more intense because you know you've got those guys right behind you on your back, and it's just edge of the seat all the time.
If you're going round a corner and you're leaning on that other driver to get you round and you see them being forced to run wide, I mean, it's a real sense of satisfaction doing that.
We've watched hours and hours and hours of DVDs of watching the type of racing and the characteristics of that type of racing. So when you're playing the game, when you're racing touring cars, you're going to see a lot of bumper, very close action, cars rubbing up against each other all the time. In open wheel racing, because the cars are much more fragile, the drivers always have to keep that little bit of distance between themselves, and that's completely reflected in the game. So with all the different types of racing in the game, there's also a wide range of different types of AI and close racing as well.
21 cars on track and all action, skids and slides and sparks and smoke, and it's all really fun. It's really exciting and really exhilarating.
Very clever. So now we know the ins and outs of how the game is made, it's time for me to take the car for a spin. Come on. Well, despite my inside knowledge of the game and my practice laps in the real car, I think I may need some help from my instructor and race driver, Paul O'Neill.
So as you were doing before, you stay to the left-hand side and you just go following down the line, then a touch of the brakes, that's it. Off the brakes, turn right, no, the black stuff, that's it. Squeeze the power.
Oh, I remember that corner, it was really tricky, wasn't it?
It was good. You were very good through there. Not the grass, that's it, apex. And then squeeze the power on.
It's amazing because I know what's coming up next.
That's well held, nice work. Better than when you're in the real car. That's mega. Well done, there's some crowd. You can see the attention to detail that the programmers have took is amazing. If they've not been to a circuit, they actually use games like ToCA Race Driver 3 to help them along the way, which I've done in the past to circuits I've not known. Off the brakes, remember, never brake in a corner. Squeeze the power on when you're exiting. Never seen anyone take it that quick, but well done. That's great, well done. Same again. Now you're driving like a proper racing driver because you're using a bit of the grass. A bit more than usual people would, but you're using a bit, so that's good. Yep. So even the lap times are comparable to what we were doing in the actual Clio Cup car that we have outside, so that's it. Not too much grass, nice. Marshals are waving flags, well done.
That's not a good sign,
no,
is
that's
it?
not good, no. You never want to really see them. You'll see them if you do that, well done. Nice. Wow, look at the side of that. Door's open now, well done, mate.
With the door open, I thought it was about time I made my exit. It's hard to recreate the actual feeling of motoring around a track, the excitement, the exhilaration, but Race Driver 3 does all this and more.
Now, after my perfect performance behind the wheel of Race Driver 3, I think the professional world of racing is calling me. I reckon once more around the track should do it.
You can experience for yourselves the incredible level of realism, the unprecedented number of racing classes, the huge number of championships, state-of-the-art AI and sheer driving fun when you take Race Driver 3 for a spin when it hits stores on PlayStation 2, Xbox and PC February 2006.